Hi everyone, this is Morgan, and in this video, I walk through the lead transfer and painting stages for your final fruit and color piece. I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you already have cut your paper. Maybe you've already even laid out a 14 by 14 inch section on your paper using drafting or painter's tape, and you know how you would like to reflect your final piece. So you know what you want to have in that center corner. At this point, you should grab your Journal 2 composition done on tracing paper and get ready to trace over it again in pencil. At this point, we've already talked about doing a lead transfer. If you think you'd benefit from it, you should consider reviewing the video that I did for Journal 4 Part 1, where I talk about this process just so you understand kind of the theory behind the process really thoroughly. What you can see me doing here is using a blunt object, in my case, a tablet pen, to put pressure on the right side of my tracing paper, so the side I want facing up, after I've already loaded up the wrong side of my paper with lead through tracing over everything again in pencil on the wrong side. You're going to be doing the same basic process again. You will just be doing it 4 times. So this is my original Journal 2 composition done on tracing paper. To do my lead transfer piece for Journal 4, I traced over the wrong side, and you can see that I've now flipped this image, so we're looking at the quote-unquote wrong side. But I traced over that wrong side in pencil so that I'd be able to kind of use it again like a stamp once I flipped it over. Even though I'm the one who introduced the terms right and wrong, now is probably a good time to ditch them. It'll get too confusing. So I'm going to call the kind of intended orientation for my piece side A, and then the flip side we'll just call side B. So now we're switching over to side A and side B as our pieces of terminology. So this is what your outline will eventually look like. You'll notice that we have kind of 4 quadrants. They've sort of merged together at this point, but we can see that the original piece, which is in kind of the bottom left corner, has been reflected 3 times. So in 2 quadrants, side A faces up. In the other 2, side B faces up. So knowing that, I'm going to walk you through the order in which I would execute your lead transfers. I would strongly recommend that you do your side A facing up transfers first, being careful to line them up so that they're parallel to the borders. The reason I think doing this first makes the most sense is, 1, your side A piece at this point should be traced over in ink. You also want to do these 2 together just because if you keep flipping between side A being coated with lead and side B being coated with lead, it's really easy to make your paper messy. So you'll do your side A facing up transfers first. And again, just to repeat, this involves loading up side B with the lead and then transferring using pencil or a blunt object, just like we did with the Journal 4 piece that employed a lead transfer process. So after you've gotten your 2 side A pieces transferred, you're going to trace with lead onto side A this time. And it might be worthwhile to just thoroughly wipe down your side B piece before moving on to this step, just so, again, you're not getting lead all over your hands and transferring it everywhere. But now you're switching to side B being the face up side, side A being the face down side. So you're loading up side A and using the lead on side A to transfer down. So you should end up with something like this. You likely will have a fainter outline than this initially. I've just used a scan to make it easy to approximate this process in Photoshop. I would count on doing what you probably needed to do for Journal 4 and just tracing over any faint lines with pencil to make it more clear. I also would use an eraser at this point to try to remove any messier spots where the lead transferred to places that you didn't intend. I also hope and assume that you don't do this all in one sitting, just for, the sake of your hands not getting insanely cramped up. So Hopefully you give yourself a break between this stage where you do the lead transfer and the next stage where you paint. Now we're going to talk about how to paint and how to tackle paint order. Unless your background is a very, very dark hue, I would probably recommend doing your background color first. The reason for this is if it bleeds into some of your actual objects a little bit, it will likely be easier to cover up your background paint, as opposed to just having to be really meticulous painting around objects that have already been painted. Here, for example, if I got a little bit of this kind of yellow-green paint in some of my foreground objects, I could probably just wipe it off, which is an option I wouldn't have if I had already painted, those strawberries in up to this point. So after I've already got my background, you kind of want to consider two things. One, it's easiest if you can paint out from the center. And two, it's nice to start with your lighter colors. If you need to paint over lighter colors with a darker hue, that's easier than the inverse. So you can see me just slowly working out. So trying to do my center work first and then radiate out, and again trying to maybe paint the lighter objects first when that's an option to me. So this is just trying to make it, again, easy to keep your painting relatively clean, and also considering that when you mix a bunch of one color, painting that at the same time is useful. So you'll see I paint a lot of my darker magentas and my reds in the same fictional step here. So the only thing left at this point to do is add an outline. Just like in Photoshop, if you want to think back to your layer stack order, maybe thinking of working from the bottom up, the outline is sort of the cherry on top finishing stage. You might not want to do it. You might like your piece perfectly well without the outlines. Consider employing an outline at least in part of your composition to give it some definition. So that's the process of just making your painting. Please shoot any questions my way. Good luck.